Hey everybody, this is Darren Van Dam, and you are watching Flick Connection, the show that helps you get more out of movies. And today I'm going to be telling you about 10 mind-melting movies you can currently catch on Hulu. So longtime subscribers know, oftentimes a lot of things on Hulu are also available, included with Prime Video. This is a Hulu list, they're all on Hulu, but I will be indicating to you up here next to the title if it's available on Prime Video at this time as well. And these are all mind-bending movies. They've got wild twists and turns. We've got sci-fi stuff in here, a little bit of horror mixed in, just wild, crazy stuff guaranteed to break your brain. Now let's go ahead and start all the way back at number 10 with the one. In fact, my number 10 and number 9 picks are the ones that are not for everybody, so listen closely. High Rise stars Tom Hiddleston in this really weird, almost sort of a Stanley Kubrick type thing. Now, I would not say that this is as good as anything Stanley Kubrick's done, but it's done in a similar vein. It's very odd, trippy. This does not take place in the same universe that you and I live in. It's this slightly off, sort of weird fantasy thing, and it can be hard to follow at times. It will jump ahead, and that's part of the language of this movie. It's not necessarily a mistake, but it does eliminate, I think, a lot of people from enjoying this movie. But if you clicked on this video and you like really, and I mean really weird, twisted stuff, High Rise might be right up your alley, even if it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Bug stars Michael Shannon in what I think is one of his best performances, and Ashley Judd. Again, not for everybody, but this is actually directed by William Friedkin, who's most famous for The Exorcist and The French Connection. Just a really killer director, and this is adapted from a stage play. So this takes place in one little motel room, and Michael Shannon plays a character who is hyper paranoid and believes that there are tiny aphids and tiny bugs sent by the government or something that are infecting this room that he and Ashley Judd are in. That's the basic setup. And not much else goes on in this movie. So even though it's another one that's not for everybody, it is very different from High Rise. High Rise has all sorts of crazy stuff going on. Bug is very subdued. There's not a lot of special effects or anything. It's really just the performance of Michael Shannon. But if you like the way I've described this one, Bug is a cool flick, but again, just trust me, not for everybody. So I'll jump from that to one that is much more accessible, and it is the only pure horror movie on this list. Both High Rise and Bug have heavy horror elements in them. Horror fans will dig them. Ghost Stories is an incredible anthology horror flick. It's got some great scares in it. All the stories are nice and short, and they resolve themselves quickly. It's good, solid horror entertainment. But the reason it makes this list is because the story that actually binds all of this anthology together can be very trippy and mind-bending, and it kind of takes you by surprise. A little bit of a spoiler, me telling you that that's the case, but it is the reason to check out this movie. Not only that, they get some great cast members in this for an anthology movie, but again, just the spooky nature of how they put this anthology together, basically the story that ties it up, is really cool stuff. It's different from anything I've seen in an anthology, which in my book makes this one rise above a lot of the anthology movies that have come out over the past decade or so. Now, a sci-fi flick that's got a lot of horror elements, especially at the beginning of the movie, is Pandorum. This stars Ben Foster, and while I don't love the movie as a whole, I feel like it's missing something. I love a lot of the elements that are in it. Ben Foster is one of my favorite actors. He is great here. Dennis Quaid has a pretty good little role. There's some other character actors that pop up that are great, but essentially what's going on here is he wakes up on this dark spaceship. It looks like Alien or something. And there is something on this ship, and the cool thing about Pandorum is that the less you know going into it, the better. Meaning, that's the first 5 minutes of the movie, and then everything sort of unfolds as it goes forward, and it does get pretty wild. Especially for a little popcorn horror flick, this one really reaches. I don't think it quite gets to where it wants to go. I think that's one of the flaws with this movie. However, it gets major points for reaching, and it's a really rich world along the way. Just a cool flick with some really scary elements to it. So if you're the scaredy cat and you don't like horror movies, this is one to steer away from. So I'm going to be honest with you about this next pick, and it did make the middle of the list, but this is one that I kept wanting to turn off when I watched it, and I could not do it. It's called She Dies Tomorrow. This one does not follow a basic story structure. It's a little hard to follow for about the first half or so, and that's done on purpose. You're not really supposed to know what's going on, but you gradually get the gist of it. This movie is based on a fairly basic concept, but it's a wild one, and so it does take a while for you to wrap your head around it. And the movie itself is kind of just a delivery device for the concept, meaning the story is pretty thin, which is usually a problem, but in this case, the movie's so rich, it looks nice, the performances are great, and the concept, I don't want to say it's so clever, it's so interesting that I was like on the edge of my seat for the first half, like what is going on? And then when I got it, I was like, okay, this is a pretty cool take on, again, a horror movie. This one's essentially a horror movie. It's not gonna totally freak you out. This is another one that's not for everybody, but if you like the really weird, unusual stuff, this is gonna be kind of unlike anything you've seen before, even if it is a little slow. So one of the newest releases on this list came out during the pandemic. I loved it. However, it is strange, which is why it's on this list, obviously, but pay attention to the way I describe this one, because for some of you, this movie's gonna be too much, and for others, it's gonna not be quite enough. It's called Possessor. Now, this is actually directed by Brandon Cronenberg, and if that name sounds familiar, he's the son of David Cronenberg, who's most famous for directing movies like The Fly, Dead Ringers, Existenz, Naked Lunch, Videodrome. I mean, the list goes on for David Cronenberg, but he's most famous for those horror movies with weird, twisted body horror, and that is present in Possessor, but you can tell that Brandon's not really ripping off his father. However, he's fairly heavily influenced by him. Now, another one that is gonna be kind of hard to follow, you're gonna be lost at the beginning of this movie, and you're supposed to be. You're gonna discover it as you go. This has very, very violent moments in it. It opens with an extremely violent moment. There's an extremely brutal murder that takes place in the middle of the movie, because this is about an assassin who is able to literally possess another person. To me, this felt like a more dark, twisted episode of Black Mirror, if you can believe that. And it does go in a direction that's very cerebral. It's almost impossible to follow towards the end, but there's something there, there's something happening, and it does reveal itself to you. It's very interesting stuff. This is for the art film crowd. If you like the way this one looks, if you're a fan of David Cronenberg's work at all, it's at least interesting to see what his son is doing. I found this movie to be very interesting. I loved the look of it, I loved the performances, I loved the concept. But it is a strange one, and again, not for everybody. But if you generally like my recommendations, watch this one with the caveat that it's very strange. If you can't tell by now, there's no real crowd pleasers on this list. It's not that type of list. But if you're having trouble finding something on this list that is for you, then Identity might be right up your alley. This is the closest thing to something that was made for a broad audience, yet it's still really twisted. Additionally, it's got a great cast. You've got John Cusack, Ray Liotta, Amanda Peet, John Hawkes, Alfred Molina, and a bunch of character actors that you're gonna recognize. But this movie is about a bunch of strangers that meet up at a remote desert motel. Weird things start happening, people start getting knocked off, nobody knows what's going on, neither will you, and that is the fun of this movie. It's the basic sort of murder mystery. The lights went out, someone killed the butler, what do we do next? It's that type of movie, yet it can be terrifying at moments, it's intense at moments, it's got twisted elements to it. It is a fun ride, especially if you've never seen it. If you have, a little bit of the magic will be taken away because you know what's going on, but if you don't, this is a really fun movie to watch, especially if you're maybe younger. This one came out in 2003. It was popular when it was released, but time has kind of forgotten it, so if you've never seen it, I highly recommend it. Now, the newest and most action-packed movie on this list is actually a Hulu original because all the movie theaters in the world were closed, so it couldn't come out in theaters, but that is Boss Level. This is from the same director as Smokin' Aces, The A-Team. It is just a fun, wild ride. The concept for this is essentially Groundhog Day Frank Grillo wakes up every day, he's got to fight the same bad guys, a bunch of people are trying to kill him. To me, this one felt a lot like a video game. They even put some sound effects and some things in there to sort of elevate that concept. Fans of movies like Deadpool should definitely check out Boss Level. To me, it's one of the coolest things that they released during the pandemic. And if you're thinking, well, I've seen a bunch of movies where it's basically Groundhog Day. Tom Cruise did one that was science fiction. Okay, this one handles it differently enough to make it interesting and different. Mel Gibson has a really wild role in this movie. He's not in it much, but he's in it enough. Naomi Watts is in it. She seemed a little out of place because she seems, I don't know, I felt like she's bigger than her role in this movie was. And then Will Sasso from Mad TV has an incredible role. He's not in it much, but man, when they show him sitting on Mel Gibson's desk all mean mugging and stuff, it's just cool stuff. I really dug this movie a lot. I've watched it a couple of times. Just good, rated R, fun, action. I think I've said enough. All right, and this is a mind-bending list. The Ninth Gate comes in at number 2. This stars Johnny Depp. It's from the mid-90s. It's fairly long, but it's very, very well done. In this movie, Johnny Depp plays a book dealer who is searching for these demonic texts. Fairly simple stuff to start off with, but he gets sucked down into this very conspiratorial, supernatural kind of rabbit hole. Now, I would not call this movie a supernatural movie. This is a very sort of grounded type movie. It feels like it takes place in our world, but he does get sucked into this cultish, weird thing, and it is a mystery movie. Weird things happen along the way, and the movie will reveal itself along the way, like a lot of these on this list. It's got heavy, heavy mystery tones, and I loved it for that. Another one that was popular when it came out, but it's been over 20 years, and time has kind of forgotten it. If it's been a while since you've seen it, or you've never seen it, and you like dark, twisted mystery type stuff, this one's gonna be right up your alley. And then my number 1 pick is very different from everything else on this list, but it fits the mold for a mind-melting movie, and it's my favorite one out of everything on here. And it's also the longest. It's about 1 minute longer than The Ninth Gate, and that is Vanilla Sky, starring Tom Cruise, Penelope Cruz, Cameron Diaz, Jason Lee, and Kurt Russell. This is directed by Cameron Crowe, who also directed Almost Famous and Jerry Maguire. People go nuts for those movies. They're good movies, but personally, I like Vanilla Sky. One of the things I like about it is that it's got this wild, twisted element to it that you're not gonna find out about for quite a while, and that's okay, because everything else that you experience along the way is fairly dry and simple compared to what the movie's gonna reveal to you, but it's still interesting enough. Tom Cruise does a great job, the characters are great, the story's really compelling when it feels grounded, and then when it sort of takes off and leaves our reality, it's just this incredible surprise, and it's trippy stuff along the way. This movie's kind of a magic trick. It does this really fantastic job of lulling you into a certain state and then completely changing up things. This one's odd for a Tom Cruise movie, and I love it for that. Let me know in the comments below what you look forward to watching most off of this list. Also, help me thank the Patreon supporters. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, there is a link in the description below. You can go check out the details. You can also follow the link to become a channel member right here on YouTube. Both are great ways to support the channel, but channel members do get access to exclusive videos every week. But I will keep making these videos for you as long as you keep watching them. Thanks for watching this Hulu list, and you will see me on the next one.